This training video is brought to you by the Technical Solutions Sales Team of the ESS Group at Intel. In this video, we will be demonstrating how to configure Microsoft's DHCP and DNS services in preparation for provisioning AMT-enabled vPro systems. The first service we'll configure will be the DHCP server. In this demonstration, we'll go over the configuration of one DHCP scope. But bear in mind that if multiple DHCP scopes exist, changes will need to be made to those scopes as well. For each DHCP scope, you will need to enable option 15, which appends the DNS domain to client systems, which includes vPro systems. As you can see in this demonstration, our domain name is prodemo.com. You will need to modify this entry appropriately for your environment. Through the DHCP Management Console, navigate to the scope options of each scope and select the Configure Options menu item. And select option 15 and enable it by clicking on the checkbox. Enter your domain name that is appropriate for your environment. Again, keep in mind this option will need to be enabled for all DHCP scopes where vPro systems reside that require provisioning. Before we move forward, let's take a moment to take a look at DHCP scope option 15. Within the AMT Management Engine BIOS, there are three methods that are used to communicate with a provisioning server in order for the AMT BIOS to receive its configuration settings. The first method used is to contact provision server on the network. Should that fail, then the BIOS will look to its own internal domain name entry and appends that domain name entry to provision server. The management engine will attempt that specific combined name connection, and if there's still no response, then it will contact provision server with the DHCP option 15 domain name entry appended as the suffix. So by enabling option 15 on your DHCP server, it allows the AMT Management Engine BIOS a third option to connect to a provisioning server in your environment. If option 15 is not enabled on your DHCP server, it will require manual entries of either the IP address of your provisioning server or the domain name suffix that matches the same domain name as your provisioning server in the AME BIOS. This will need to be entered on each and every vPro system in your environment that requires provisioning. So by using option 15, it saves a tremendous amount of time and effort of having to manually enter the information on each vPro system to enable them to be provisioned. Let's now look to configuring DNS services. The first requirement for AMT provisioning is a host entry or an A record for your server running the SCS service. This is your provisioning server. In this demonstration, our server running the SCS console is ProSCS. Browse through your domain to find the appropriate record for your provisioning server. Now, once you have an A record in place for your provisioning server, you can now create an alias or CNAME entry for a provision server, which is what the AMT ME BIOS will look to communicate and receive its configuration settings. To create a CNAME or alias entry, navigate to the domains where the vPro systems will reside and right-click on the domain name in the left window pane. From the pop-up menu, select New Alias, type in Provision Server for alias, and then click on the Browse button and navigate to the provisioning server for the target host. One important note. If you have subdomains in your environment, you will need to create CNAME entries for your provisioning server for each subdomain that you have. Once you're finished creating the alias entry, it's recommended to test the communication to provision server on the network. You can test it by using the ping command in a DOS window and pinging provision server and see if there was a response from your provisioning server. If you receive a response from your provisioning server, then everything is configured properly and you may start to provision AMT-enabled systems in your environment.